What is enlightenment? It's finding what our perception of the entire creation of ourselves and the universe is from our perception, understanding what it means for us and then how we can express it to others.
We have begun. So, I'm here today with Alaria, who's an amazing ball of amazing. And
Do we know what size and shape that is?
it can be all shapes and sizes. Sweet, we like that.
How does that sound?
Yeah. And let's just get right into it, So, this is a pretty cool podcast we just started. It's called Into the Underworld. And the idea, I think, is to it will obviously evolve, I'm sure, but the idea is to bring in some really amazing people that have inspired me and impacted me in my life, and just kind of get to know them better.
Fantastic.
So, what's your deal?
What's my deal? Why am I here? Why don't we ask ourselves that?
Where are you from? You have a British accent,
Yeah.
in a way, a very soft British accent, but also you got this Italian flair too. So, what's going on there?
A wonderful dichotomy of yin and yang, which you have on one side like this fiery Italian energy and microclose. Sure, how's that? Let's see, is that better? I have a very soft voice. So. Were you guys hearing that? Yeah, good. Okay. So on the one side, you have these two diverse cultures. You have opera, you have war, you have the Roman Empire, you have all this heritage that goes back generations, and you can see it in the streets, and the Italians are so passionate. And then the British, where I was educated, we drink tea.
Right.
And we're very mild. And so everyone sees this as what? Reserved. And under this cool exterior, what do? I have this fiery Italian energy. So I learned very early on that there is a yin and yang, there is a dichotomy, there is a polarization in all of us. And this can be where we're heading in terms of our enlightenment and our path, our life path. And then this other energy that kind of holds us back. And so, look at the way we met, Trey. We met
Yes, through can we do
as a shaman, a world traveler, a spiritual man that dances and sings, but brings an energy and a power with him.
He's just got dichotomy too, because he's but the Mamo people, silence and stillness. And he's out there being dancing,
That's right. He sort of brings it. He bridges the gap, and his energy connected us. I mean, they believed in string theory of our series, and they connected our energies.
So what do you know about the Mamos?
I know about Daenerys, another dear friend who you should interview.
Of course.
I would like to introduce her to you. Told me about them, but not much. Most of the time when I'm hosting their events, my focus isn't really so much on their history currently, but their ancient history.
Yeah.
Because it ties in with my passion for science. One of my ancestors was a philosopher and scientist that unfortunately was burned at the stake by the Roman Catholic Church way back when.
You know, one of your ancestors?
Yeah.
So what's his name?
His name was Giordano.
The Don.
Giordano. And he and Galileo used to hang out and, philosophize about things. And he actually wrote, I believe, a play called Il Candeleo, which was later translated into Toilet Night. But problems are problems. He said quite emphatically that there's life on other planets, theoretically, in the 16th century. So, about it.
Wow.
But, Cersei, when you think about the Manos and what they've done, and how they reached out energetically from their tribal lands, and one of the theories they believe in is scientific. This is what I go about.
Yeah.
And they believe that every point in the universe is connected with a dark string or a light gold string. And this is the yin-yang dichotomy. which I experienced growing up in multiple cultures. And when they told me that, I was like, dude, you're talking about string theory. That they believing this for millennia. And so what did they do? They connected my garden sanctuary to the tribal out. So to the learn. They saw me in my garden, and I've had the elders there. All through a beautiful friend who's got some mad in Colombia, who's coming to be with them. She just said, Hilary, they come to your garden. I didn't have any choice.
And why do you think that they chose your garden of all places? What's going on in your garden? What's happening there? What's so special about your sacred spirit garden?
The spirit garden. Well, it's in honor of goddess Yamaya. Okay. So, I had a calling to reach out to her when I was meditating the space, manifesting what the space could be. And I sat down in the garden, and I only live a few, maybe quarter of a mile from the ocean, less than quarter of a mile from the ocean. And I felt the warm sea air wafting over the top of the garden sanctuary. And I took a breath in, and she just appeared in my mind. And this beautiful African goddess of ancient times.
I think you've seen her before, like iconography, or it just
However, so we met. She decided just to come up tonight tomorrow energetically in my garden space to be. And she just whispered in my ear and said, yes, this will be perfect. And she inspired my design of this place, which all of the lines of energy inside it all focus on the center and spread out, so that when I perform, what goes on there is healings, sound bouts, fire ceremonies, dancing, cacao, basically enlightened energy. And so I had already created this space, and I am with Goddess Yamya. We opened ourselves up to anyone that wanted to be in this space of peace and tranquility and enlightenment and healing. And the mammals came.
Wow. Okay, so what is your impression of enlightenment? What would you how would you define that?
Oh, that's a good one. I believe we should all be on the path of this. So if we go back to my scientific mind, and I love to science out. I was going to say the out, truly, because it makes sense. God is in science, science is in God. It's all part of this. So enlightenment. If we consider ourselves at the center of the universe, okay, we are just a big condensed ball of supermatter, surrounded with this big black hole, and everything, if all the knowledge of the entire universe is compressed into us, so we become this physical thing. And that's gravity. That's the force of the black hole, our black hole universe, pulling us in and molding us with all of the knowledge and wisdom of that entire universe at our disposal. What is enlightenment? Unraveling that. It's finding what our perception of the entire creation of ourselves and the universe is from our perception. Understanding what it means for us, and then how we can express it to others in the purest form of light. Hence, education and enlightenment. And I believe it's a form of education that is in our DNA. It is in the stardust that makes us. It is in the people we meet. It is in what we give to others and what we receive from others.
So it's like a clarification of who we are, identification,
Indeed, our life path.
or also would you say there's a element of transcendence beyond the things, beyond the identification?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact,
Kind of holistic sort of sense.
I don't think any of it would make sense unless you had a very strong spiritual content. And it could be any spiritual content, it could be our perception. For me, my perception started in my 20s when I died for over 2 minutes. and I was able to have the beautiful gift of ascendance.
Okay.
And I didn't even know what was going on. 1 minute I went to sleep after a very stressful day at work, and the next minute I woke up and I'm floating above my body.
Okay.
And I didn't know what was going on at first. So I just looked around the room and all these lights were on. And I was like, oh, bugger, did we fall asleep with the lights on again?
So what was the scenario? Like that you just collapsed one day.
I was born with a condition in my heart, in my heart space. I had born with a hole in my heart. So for many years, I suffered with what's called an arrhythmia. And under too much stress or too much cortisol, anxiety, my arrhythmia gets worse and my heart stops beating.
Interesting.
Wow. My heart just stopped.
Wow.
And so I see all this light on in the room and I look at the chandelier and the bedside lamps. Nothing's on. So I'm like, well, where is all this bleeding light coming from? Let's turn off the lights and go to bed, you know? So I realized that the light was coming from me, and I looked at my arm and I did not see skin and flesh. What I saw was a massive swirling stars, just like the universe, surrounded with a beautiful glowing white light.
Was that like a moment of enlightenment?
No, it's when I shot through the ceiling and traveled. And my enlightenment happened when I was traveling through time and space as I ascended.
Wow.
Yeah, and
So and it's really just a sense of everything and oneness
oneness. Yes,
and togetherness.
and togetherness. Yeah. Time and space have no meaning, and the entire universe is held together with love.
Do you feel like there's do you think it's fair to say that it can also count as enlightenment if you just abstract it? Or do you really have to embody the visceral feeling of this, what you're experiencing, basically? Something that shoots you off into space, so to speak.
It can. I think the most important thing is what you make of it.
Yeah.
And for me, when we think of what that energy of healing is, or energy of love is healing, healing is love. And as a practitioner in Reiki and sound bath performer, you can bring that love energy into a path that's really good for you. My path was to become a healer and to really hone those abilities. Your path can be whatever you choose it to be. You are here facilitating this interview. And this is, in this very moment, your path. This is your destiny. And it's like embracing that wholeheartedly, without reservation, without holding back, without nothing holding you back. And if it can do good, and if it can achieve enlightenment in others, then
Beautiful.
that's the way I see AF.
That's so you've well lived life, sounds like.
That's the one I trust.
That's a very fulfilling mission. And but I wanted to ask you, have you died multiple times?
Just the one.
Just that one time?
Just the one time.
Okay. And then you came back in like what 5 minutes or something?
No, actually, the whole experience lasted over 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, physically in this world, but it lasted a lot longer up there.
And did you see Yamaga then as well?
No.
Did you see any other?
Oh, yes. I emerged as I was flying through time and space. I emerged into this beautiful chamber with seven angelic beings.
That sounds like something you can't forget.
No, and you got to remember, this happened before the days of the internet. Any books on the subject matter were basically in the occult section of the library there. So I had no context. This was all happening live at real time. I shut out my body, I'm completely aware, I'm traveling through time and space, and this feeling of love, like you've never felt before. It was pure, and I felt I pick up anywhere, anytime in space. And this later became the model for an astrophysics paper that I wrote about the structure of the universe and how it's directly related to enlightenment and ascension. The whole structure of the universe, everything, I've started to see it. And it was downloaded. Well, what happened was then I emerged in this beautiful place of peace and harmony. And I was greeted by seven angelic beings, for better or less word. They were just people, but very nice beings. and they were speaking to me without opening their mouths. And they were just welcoming me to this new realm. And they were just looking at me saying, "We're so happy you're here. Thank you for coming. We've been waiting for you. We are so happy you're here." No, again and again, and they knew my entire existence. And it's almost as if they were family. And I was like, excuse me, but what just happened? And they were like, "You passed on. This is your time." Well,
Wow.
and I was like, okay. So I kind of was resisting.
And you were just still a young person.
Oh, they 22. So barely, really just, formulating who I was at that time. So this was like, but I'm too young to die. I'm only 22. And so they all bowed their head in reverence and looked towards this beautiful realm, which I had the opportunity to just walk into.
And I believe was it kind of like heaven or
Yeah.
see pearly gates? I mean,
There was a semblance of gates, yes. There was some clouds. And everyone says, "Oh my gosh, now it gets cheesy." But yes, there were some gates. And the gates were open. And I remember they all bowed their head in reverence and looked towards the gates as if they were ushering something. And I was like standing by them. And then this amazing being just starts to walk towards me. And in white robes, the sandals, everything. And he looks at them for a minute and they have a conversation that I'm not privy to. So I'm like, okay, what's going on here? I was completely intellectually aware, but skeptical at the same time. So this angelic being who could only think of as like, I don't know, you could say Jesus, you could say Saint Peter, just pick what you are. But he puts his arm around him and he says, "Come, walk with me." And we start walking towards the entrance there. I love like, so I love his energy. And it's suddenly so that I say to him, "Well, excuse me, but I just had a conversation, like, I'm too young to die." And he looks at me and he says, "Children die too, you know." I went, "Oh, that's right, they do." And then he just leans over, looks right into my eyes, and he says, "If you want me to send you back, you had to give me a better reason than that." So I was like, "Oh, I'm on the spot now. What do I think of?" So the young thing didn't work, so I said, "So I can be there for people." And he said, "That's a good reason." Sent me flying right back into my body. My fiance the ambulance was on the way. I was clinically dead. Yeah. And my heart just started beating again. Interesting. So that's enlightenment.
wow. So and ever since then you've basically been in service.
In one or another. Yes, I veered off my path. And that's actually something you can do. That's part of enlightenment. For a while, I was flying airplanes, I was doing different jobs, I was building companies. But this naggy little bee of that incident, this little buzzy bee of the spot saying, "No, you need to get back onto the path."
And do you feel like you converged on that path before or after your transition?
My transition, there's a gender transition. Yeah, on my physical
It was
transition.
all kind of in the same time period.
No, there were years in between. Okay. Yes. In fact, um, the yin yang balance within me, as you said, Trey, extends beyond just my cultural heritage. It's also my gender unity. I am what they call the twin flame energy, masculine and feminine combined. And that happened many years later.
Okay.
And I had to transcend the understanding, being able to facilitate this journey of enlightenment that I had chosen with two genders, and to make sure they are in complete harmony. So my masculine and my feminine, and all the issues that had create this divergence is throughout my life, and all the criticisms that I had growing up, because in my day, it was hardly ever heard of.
Were you kind of were you a gentle man or more aggressive, or did you feel like there was
No.
economy in all your behavior too? Like,
Well,
they're sort of gentle now.
I'm gentle now.
No.
But the thing is, being born into sex the way I was, part of me grew female, part of me grew man, and even when I met my wonderful doctor, he clocked it right away. He said, you have a female mind and masculine hippocampus, but we need to fix that. So this genius sign that helped me with that, which brought in the softness. Was I always soft? There was always a female on the inside.
Yeah.
Even when I presented as a masculine in my early years, I had to.
And that
From the age of
that'd be frustrating.
very, because up until the age of 6, and I was welcomed as female. And then from the age of 6 or so, masculine. So I was like, well, what does that mean?
How does that work? Your parents thought you were female at first?
My mother,
What treated you that way?
no, my mother treated me as female. She even felt I was female in the womb space. This isn't the days before Chris. They even had a girl's name picked out for me and everything. Really? Yes. I don't know if it's still around. When my mother is my father is ascended. Yes.
I wonder what her impression is.
She loves it.
Yeah.
Because she sees this as your self.
Yeah.
Yes. And my father now has ascended. He's passed on. And I believe he understands it too. Because he didn't before, not that much. But now he does, because he's gained clarity and wisdom out there. And working with him every long gap. But yes, this happened many years when I transitioned was many years. That was a big gap.
But when you're younger, like 1 to 6, you were kind of treated as a woman. You are female.
So what I had to do then was had to work out what being a boy was, a young boy.
And that's because of the way you went to school.
School, it's pressure. It's my father's pressure. Let's just say, got to be a boy. You better present as a boy. They had to make a decision. So I went back to, my education. And like Pygmalion creating a statue, from the female perspective, I decided I would create a masculine persona. Almost like a puppeteer with a puppet. I thought, well, what kind of persona would I like to have as my masculine self? So I was actually fearsome and powerful, but in a very humble way. And even when and I had a wisdom which knew how to wield what I had created from a feminine perspective, but the masculine strength. So I combined the two together.
Do you think you overcompensated in some ways as a man?
Well, there was a time when I was in the Royal Air Force and I almost got caught by striking a superior officer.
Yeah.
This guy was a complete moron. Everyone hated it. And I was very young at the time. And it was like he had this like Hitler complex or a Napoleon complex. And he was in charge of what's called the Regiment, which is the military police arm of the Royal Air Force. And after the series of events that happened, I actually got to meet him face to face in a way that was very private, and I took him down. Now,
Ballsy.
it was very ballsy.
Yeah.
The details of it were very interesting, and I managed to get away with it because we were doing an exercise which had a lot of military-based fire with things going off, so we could really see each other. I knew it was him, and I took him down, and so about a week later, it was the entire talk of the Air Force Base. Oh, who did this? And eventually I admitted it. And as a masculine, I was in the 101 Squadron Club, which is a Battle of Britain, was in Squadron of Spitfires. And I had a 20-foot table full of beer because everyone was celebrating that night. It was the most hangover of hangovers. And this is my masculine self. And so the next morning, I wake up and the bugles are going for reveille. And my head is pounding like there's no tomorrow. So, as my eyes slowly open, there's 3 regimental officers, and the one in the middle's got handcuffs, and they're ready to put me away. So I was taken to the Air Chief Marshal's office, and I had to explain myself.
Okay. And how do you explain that?
Well, I tuned into the wisdom and the intellect of my dual-gendered status, And I started talking, and I started talking in a way that got me off scot-free.
There.
And I was let off. I could have been in prison for 10 years.
And that's something else you acquired at a young age. Was that maybe like in your earlier years, you had some kind of experience where that made you understand how to maybe talk to people differently?
Yes, I had a wisdom and a strength that somehow having to deal with both genders, I could be compassionate yet forceful at the same time, especially in a masculine mob like the Air Force. Um, but yes, definitely the dual aspect within my thoughts is a great advantage.
Wow. Yeah, I know you told me about this time where you had talked to a priest. That was early on.
That was even earlier.
Okay.
So, um, so still coming to terms around 9 years old with my situation and pretending to be a young boy. As I entered my growth phase at around 8.5, 9 years old, but something started to happen. And I didn't know what was going on, but I was able to see colors around people, literally halos. And it got to be overwhelming to the point where I was like, what is going on? And I didn't know anything about it. So one day at Raised Run the Catholic, I was at a church. We had a church gathering. I think it was the Harvest Festival. And I saw a young priest. He must have been, in his 20s. And I thought, well, maybe he knows what all of these colors around people that I'm seeing are. So I walked up to him, just this little kid, and I'm like, excuse me, what's all the colors around people? And he looks at me and he says, you can see those? And I was like, yeah, doesn't everybody? And he looks at me and he says, no. And I was like, oh, guess I'm maybe more of a weirdo than I thought I was, being, this gender issue going on. So I was just like, I felt kind of dejected. So, and I thought he was condemning me, for doing something, that's non-religious, non-Catholic. So I started to walk away and he held my arm. And so he ushered me closer to him. And he says to me, so can you see my color? And I said, yeah, it's this amazing white gold color. It's bigger than most people's. It's like really big. It's about 3 feet away from your body. And it's beautiful. And then he says, good. He says, very good. He says, then, so can you see your color? I'm like, yeah, it's this funky bright luminescent purpley blue. And he's like, good. And so I'm like, okay, we're getting somewhere, And I was like, so I'm not as crazy as I thought I was. And then he says, right, watch this. And he extended his aura out towards me. I could see it coming. And this pinnacle of light was just heading towards me. It was his light. And it pierced me right in the heart, so gently. And I felt it pushing, I could see it pushing away my blue aura, and his white gold aura was entering me. It was literally coming inside of me. I'm just looking down, just a kid. I'm like, wow, I'm just looking at this. And I felt this overwhelming sensation of pure love, which again happened to me later in my life when I had my death experience.
Yeah.
Okay.
You said it was a familiar
So
experience.
it was a familiar experience. I'd already experienced it when I was a child once at this time. So his energy was inside of me. Man, I'm loving this energy.